Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and just give me 1 second to climb into my doll costume. I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
I'm Gooey Fame, and I'm imagining that this podcast is gonna go really well, so that's gonna be made into reality. I don't know.
Yes, and we have returned to explore the stories behind your favorite Trek episodes, and today we're talking about two Star Trek tales where the crew nearly becomes lunch for a hungry predator. It's the Star Trek Prodigy episodes Dreamcatcher and Terra Firma, and the Star Trek Voyager episode Bliss.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we have not talked about Star Trek Prodigy on the show before, so
first time.
Yeah.
First time. Great. This will be good. We can kind of... Well, we've talked about it together elsewhere, but maybe we can get some of our thoughts officially on the record here.
Yeah, we'll talk about what we think about Prodigy and if it's ever coming back, because there's a lot of new Trek shows lined up, but they haven't said anything about when Prodigy's coming back yet. So.
Didn't they... I think when we... At the convention, they implied there was going to be more stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely going to be more. They've got a second season. Yeah, just when is the question, because they aired, that first 10 episodes, but they, in the midst of airing those, they said, and then we're going to release another 10 episodes, and that will be the first season. It's a 20-episode first season. But there's been no real word about when the rest of the first season will appear. And of course, everybody's got to wait their turn, because I don't think they're ever going to try to put two shows on at the same time anymore. So it could be a little bit before we see more Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah, it seems like they have no reason to put two shows on at one time.
Except for the fact that they've got 5 shows, and two other shows in the works. And so, I mean, why limit yourself? I mean, at Trek's height, they had DS9 and Voyager on at the same time. And I don't know the exact numbers. Maybe looking back, they decided that they were competing with themselves. But, it's their own streaming platform. Everybody watches it whenever they want to.
Yeah, I was thinking more they don't need to do it because they have the Trek fans no matter what.
Oh, well, yeah.
So also, I was thinking of it more cynically, I guess.
Yeah. There's a question, too, of the little deals that they've made, for distribution. So, of course, Prodigy is a co-production with Nickelodeon. And I think one of the reasons that they're going to have 20 episodes is because, cartoons have to have, a ton of episodes because they just run, every day when they're in syndication.
Right.
And so, they're not going to settle for the whole, it's streaming show, 10-episode thing. And then also... These first 10 episodes of the first part of the first season just debuted this month on Nickelodeon, the company that paid for half of them. So I think they're probably going to wait for them all to air there, and then we'll kind of go to the next phase of whatever this is. Sort of like how Discovery had that weird distribution pattern early on when they were paid for by Netflix,
right.
And so they had to wait to show them overseas. And so, yeah, I don't know. The whole walled garden streaming platform strategy has not made things easier. If anything, it's made things a lot more difficult for people.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Even for a company which I'm just trying to watch Paramount stuff here. I'm not trying to cheat on anybody. And I can't even get the more stuff that I'm looking for. But we'll talk about that and our praises and perhaps gripes about Prodigy a little bit later. This is part of the show where we talk about the news usually, but there isn't any real news to talk about other than the return of Lower Decks, which is starting its third season on August 25th.
Yes, yeah. I just kind of started rewatching the first season. I kind of wanted to I don't know. I guess it's pretty easy to go through, and I was kind of wanted to, refresh. And so I'm kind of looking forward to it, I guess. It's been a fun enough show.
We'll be covering it, of course, every Thursday night. We go live with our show called Discoverage, where we talk about the new episodes that are out of Star Trek in whatever form, whatever kind of show it is. We've talked about Prodigy and Discovery and, of course, Lower Decks. And so if you hear this before the 25th of August, 2022, tune in 8 p.m. Central at twitch.tv/EISTPOD. If you hear it after, our shows are always cataloged on our Enterprising Individuals show stream on your platform of choice. Wherever you listen to your shows, you can hear it. So join us. We talk live about the show and have guests. Of course, Gooey's been on the show a couple times and will be, of course, in the future. And so, I don't want to... I want to say that the needle is right in the middle for me in Lower Decks. Like, I'm not really looking forward to it, but it's not like I don't ever want to watch it again. I want to see where they're going. Every single one of these shows has been kind of a growing, learning process. And that's true of even the classic shows, right? Except maybe the original series. I feel like the original series, sure, it got a little deeper and more thoughtful as it went on. And then, of course, it went nuts in the third season. But I think they always kind of knew what it was. It was a weekly series, an adventure series, and it just happened to be in space. But, like, TNG had some growing pains. DS9 had some growing pains.
Definitely, yeah.
Voyager is what it is. And so, some of these new series, like Discovery, I think has gotten more solid as it's gone on. And I'm wondering where Lower Decks will be at in this third season.
Yeah, I feel like it just, I don't know, just kind of seeing them do the different shows. Like, I've gotten a little bit more, like, invested in stuff lately because, I enjoyed Prodigy okay. And then I pretty much really liked what we got from Strange New World. So it hasn't totally lost me, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, I'm willing to see what some of these shows can be,
So, like I said, if you want to find out what me and my co-host Ella Pearson thought about it, you can check us out Thursday nights at 8 on Twitch, our show Discoverage. Let's get into our featured subject for this week's episode of Backtrekking. Ever since humans could sail into the unknown, there have been stories of beguiling but deadly creatures in the wastes of the world. Sirens, mermaids, and beautiful sorceresses who present a pleasing shape to weary travelers, but seek to lead them to a watery doom. Creatures who embody the seductive entrancement of the deadly unknown. Though our stories of exploration have gone from the oceans of Earth to the oceans of space, we've retained the convention that a hero must be tempted and that sometimes a good thing is too good to be true. That's what the crew of the USS Voyager discovers in the Star Trek Voyager episode, Bliss.
Seeing
A wormhole.
leads all the way back to Earth. Is not
We should be back in the Alpha Quadrant in a matter of days.
believing.
The crew has ignored obvious signs that it's a deception.
To save the crew from themselves,
7?
I'm sorry.
a lone battle begins
It's a beast.
What does it want?
He eats starships.
against a living death trap
Fire!
on the next Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah. And one thing that, just to add to your description there, I think what both of these episodes do that make it kind of interesting is it's obviously like the sci-fi spin on it, and it makes it just a little bit more stranger because it's like it's not some like mermaid or fairy or something, but it's like this cosmic kind of entity that you wouldn't normally, you can barely even imagine encountering,
Yeah, like if you want to go back to mythology, if this is like a mythological illusion, you'd think about something like the Odyssey and Odysseus and the Sirens, and how Odysseus and his crew are forewarned about the Sirens because they're a big problem, and so he has all of his men, plug their ears with wax, and they sort of get by that way and survive that. So we don't see like what happens if they actually get caught by the Sirens, but I'm sure it's not good.
Yeah.
And then when you kind of modernize that, you can look at how this episode applies a sci-fi sort of layer to that, and it's with Seven specifically. I'm amazed that they didn't go with like, oh, her cortical implant needs an update, and so therefore, it's futzing out or something, and so she's different. In this case, her wax is just the fact that she doesn't give a shit about Earth and she doesn't want to go there at all. I don't know why. I think it falls apart because it's like, why doesn't the pitcher plant, what does she want? Why doesn't it show her the Borg or something? There is the part where she supposedly gets, I'm sorry, is the pitcher plant writing all these emails that the crew is excited about? Like, is it the pitcher plant is hacked into Voyager's computer and it's like sending them like Nigerian prince emails?
I actually have a theory about how it works. If you don't mind. But because they do say later, like, because it does eventually work on 7 because it changes its strategy, and they sort of what I sort of get from it is that it can kind of generally sense what the ship's mission is, so it like gives off a vague like thoughts of home feeling that it's like blasting that vibe at them, and so then when it actually gets to everyone, it interprets it in different ways, but then that's why the two people who just have no thoughts or feelings fondness, it just kind of bounces off, so I don't know, but then in terms of the specifics, then I'm guessing it can kind of start to mine from there, you know what I mean, like, okay, what does this person think,
to continue the music metaphor, like the first song it plays is the going home song, and it's just kind of blanketing everybody with that. And then later on, it's like, this ship's not doing what it's supposed to. Oh, there's some weirdo that doesn't want to go home. I've got to find like something else.
And we have to take it out, and it can only do that once like everyone else is kind of out of it, because it can't. They don't want to probably go into the details, but it seems like it can't multitask with the vibes it's sending out,
Yeah, it's got one tune that it can play.
Yeah,
that's a good solution. Good headcanon. I like that.
I did like the episode because maybe it didn't explain it well enough, but I liked that. I was like, it got me thinking about it, and it was kind of it's just like a fun type of creature, I guess, to think about.
I wonder what then, if we got to see what Naomi's temptation would be. It's a solid gold caddiscot board, or,
right.
Or an unlimited amount of Flodder adventures. She's like, no, I got to go play with Flodder. I was wondering about the idea of, obviously there's a nature metaphor here, but from a storytelling point of view, we've got, nature's predator is the pitcher plant, or the Venus flytrap. But in a story, there's a siren, or there's a mermaid or an enchantress, and that's sort of like the story version of the pitcher plant. And I was trying to figure out, like, why do we have stories like that, other than them just being kind of, sexist? Like, oh, what if a lady but too beautiful, right, fellas? Like, that's when you get in trouble.
Oh, you just mean like, why that specific type of story?
Yeah, like why you see these patterns repeat. It's one thing if you live in, a primitive time and you sail, but you don't have radar or GPS or maps or anything like that. And so you wonder about the things that are out beyond the tides and the places that you've gone before. And, if they're scary, and what's worse, what if they're not scary? What if they're attractive to you and they cause you to be destroyed? And myths about this exist. It isn't just some kind of like Christian, Puritan morality. Like myths about this way predate Christianity. So I wonder what it was. And I looked up on the internet. There is a condition or a state, I guess, called cherophobia, and it is the guiltiness about feeling pleasure. It is feeling bad about feeling good.
Oh,
and I feel like that has like a connection to like religion and Christianity, and the idea of like sin, and worldliness being pleasurable, but then, having to pay a price for it or to feel guilt over it. But even people who aren't, religious, I think would recognize that idea. And I wonder if there is something about the human, something unique to the human condition, where we, create these things that are like, this is really great, but it will destroy you. This is too much.
Oh yeah, like what causes this anxiety? Like, yeah. Dang, I don't know. Yeah.
I didn't come up with an answer to that question, but a creature like this creature certainly can exploit that in people. And it's interesting, the Doctor gives us a few facts. This is a mysterious creature, but the Doctor does get to scan it a little bit and says that it's probably, over 200,000 years old, and it's 2,000 kilometers wide. And so it's this very big creature, which can either... It's a little vague because we don't know what it can do, and we don't know what it's just making people see. But it can either transform or make itself look like a nebula. But still a nebula that's clearly got teeth on the inside. I would not want to fly into this nebula.
That's open
if
up,
I was the Voyager. Yeah. I'm sure it's fine. Yeah, let's get in there.
Yeah.
It's like a big mouth in space.
Do you think it's like there's like maybe some of that feeling of like just something, it's kind of basic, but like something being too good to be true, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that is something that gets brought up or explored a lot in Voyager, not necessarily with an actual creature that is trying to take advantage of you, but I think it does. Often they find wormholes or technology or a godlike alien that's like, oh, I can take you home, but you have to do this. And they're like, well, ultimately we can't, make that choice. We have to just keep going. And there must be, I'm sure in the Voyager writer's room, they had to have a corkboard just full of 3x5 cards that are all like tough choices, like you can have this, but you got to do this. And they'll have to say no. And then
step on a bunch of hamsters.
Right. Yeah.
You get to go home.
Exactly. Just tear the tag off this mattress and you'll be in your own mattress at home.
Oh, we can't. That would violate the...
That's not our way.
General Order 7.
I do like how when this episode starts, just in reference to that corkboard, Janeway goes to the bridge and she's already over it. She's like, wormhole. Yeah, all right. That always works out great. Yeah. Tell me about this wormhole. Go ahead.
Yeah, it felt very season 5.
Yeah, she knows that she's in season 5. Yeah. But I also like the fact that it immediately puts her kind of up against Janeway, against Seven, because Seven's like, no, I wouldn't have screwed up. I already scanned that area of space and I didn't see anything. And they're like, well, it kind of seems like you did screw up because we found this wormhole and it seems like it's all cool.
The way they set everything up and built like the tension was really great in this. I was like, I just watched this episode like a few months ago and I was still like, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh dang, when she walks into like, the sick bay and Tom Paris is there instead and you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's just that classic Star Trek, like they know what beats to hit,
Yeah, they do, and I think that if we weren't comparing this with the Prodigy episodes, we could easily compare this with TNG's The Game. Did you get The Game vibes?
Yes, and well, it wasn't in that Prodigy app. He was playing the game in one episode of the Prodigy. But yeah, I got that. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Well, then I don't feel too bad about that.
No, yeah, I exactly got that vibe where it's like, it's like just like a thriller type episode, and they're really good. Like, because that's something that I feel like that's a skill that Star Trek, I feel like sometimes doesn't nail when it's trying to do it like anymore. And I feel like this era, like even some of the bad episodes that go for this in like the 90s, like I feel like they just had, maybe it's like more what do you call it, more of a formula, but I don't know, they nailed that formula.
There's a mystery happening, and there's you've got like Seven in the Voyager episode, you've got Wesley in the Game episode, and something's wrong, and then every time they try to get one step ahead of whatever's happening, we find out that whatever's happening is one step ahead of them, so they take out Data because he can't be affected by the game. They turn off the Doctor because he won't be affected by the thing. And I think that's really good. I sometimes criticize Voyager for just rehashing TNG plots, although, how many space stories can you tell, in Star Trek? But and often Voyager, I think, tries to rehash a plot but is self-conscious about it, and so tries to take a different angle.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it doesn't ring as true as the way that TNG first did it, like in a superior fashion. But this is taking like a premise that is essentially what we said, is a TNG show, and like putting a really interesting new spin on it. And also having it so it's not really like the crew is, evil. I mean, they're being deluded by this creature, but they're not. Like when they're trying to capture Seven at the end, it's not the whole hold her down, put the game on her like type thing. It's just them like, no, look, we really want to get home. And no, we understand Seven doesn't want to go home, but we've seen all these emails that we got and she doesn't believe the emails are real. Mm-hmm. But these emails, yeah.
But the emails, yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of, the Chakotay's resistance is futile line. Like that's another one of those where you're like, no!
it's a little sinister. Yeah, but you could take it both ways. He could just be making a bad Chakotay joke, but also it's kind of sinister.
All the actors play it so perfectly,
Yeah.
That's really good, like where you're not sure if they're being sinister or not, but even though they are. But what they do where it's not subtle is like all their like how excited they are about the emails and stuff, and that is like, you guys are like ridiculous. Like I'm glad that they pointed out that like it also just like has a psychological effect. It's not just like it shows you the thing, like it definitely is like messing with your mind. Otherwise it's like, you guys can't just get duped by these emails, right? Like I feel like that there has to be an element of that. Like they're a little high game, like the game.
And once it's really on, like once the ship is in, in the mouth or in the stomach, then they're just completely like in a fugue state. And Neelix is imagining shaking hands with the president of the Federation and all these crazy things.
I wish there was more stuff they showed though.
Yeah.
It felt like a budget
the limitations.
thing.
Yeah, it's a budget thing.
We can get a couple guys with uniforms to come on the ship, but how do we? I don't know. Oh, okay, we can't really do that other stuff.
In the game, they've got, thank God they had a Data, and thank God they had Wesley Crusher and Robin Leffler, two nerds who couldn't find their crotches with both hands in a map, and so they're like, how does this game work? Let's look at this game.
Yeah, right.
And in this, we've got the Doctor, who's a hologram. We've got Seven, who is, a very capable and somebody who has a different value system. And then we've got Naomi Wildman.
Yes.
And I love that they point out that she's like, yeah, my mom likes Earth. I don't know. I guess it's okay. Like she has she's a boomer. She was born in space. She has no real connection to Earth. And so therefore, the song doesn't work on her.
They are like, I was just talking the other day about like who on like each series are like the real nerds of the ship, and like Wesley is definitely the real nerd of Enterprise, and I feel like Naomi and Seven are also kind of dorks, but they're like cool. So like I like that they didn't just make it that like they're into science or whatever. Like they made it very like personal for them, but had it like played very authentically. It wasn't like for Naomi, it wasn't like this big thing on her back or whatever. It felt very real, it didn't feel like melodramatic or anything,
Yeah. And Naomi is, they also could have sort of repeated the idea of the kid that likes Data, hero worship, who's following Data around. Naomi looks up to Seven, and she's very smart and she likes science, but she's also like, okay, that's enough science. Let's play some cat as caught. Let's do something else. Yeah. Yeah, they're cool. Come on.
We don't want our kids to all grow up to be like dorks, do we?
I was reading about this kid named Wesley Crusher. Oh boy, I don't want to be like him.
Yeah, exactly.
This guy keeps showing up and
I'm sorry
to take him away.
Sorry, Wesley. He's out there. He's flying around the Traveler.
Yeah, not for me.
He's probably not a dork.
We haven't even mentioned the fact that this episode opens with a completely random teaser scene.
So sick.
Where we see a guy, we have no idea who this is, but we get an idea that it's going to be important. Not only because something very thrilling is happening, but also because this character is played by W. Morgan Shepherd, amazing character actor and longtime Trek guest actor.
Yes, absolutely. And they call it out later, but he was doing his best, like, space Ahab a little bit, you know?
They put a lampshade on that made out of whale skin.
Maybe they didn't need to point it out, but I liked when he's like, you take my ship, and he's, like, screaming at the thing. That was great.
I think that this, what is this? 1990. It's the late 90s, right? It's probably 7 or 8. I think maybe that's the start of, we got to start pointing these things out. We don't want the audience to think that we don't know that we did something, and so you get this a lot. Like they'll put us out of a job basically because they'll base their plot on, something, a stock plot or a TV show or a movie, and they'll go, this is kind of like Casablanca. What's going on right now? And it might have started even earlier because I just, I appeared at this con where I talked about Quantum Leap, and I watched the entire show in preparation. Don't ever do that for anything. And half the time, I would say 75% of the time, their episodes are just based on something that's popular at the time or a classic movie. And almost always they call out, this is just like, this, From Here to Eternity or something like that.
Oh,
and so
yeah, that's rough.
I don't know if it's an insecurity or if it's they're looking to get patted on the head or if they think that the audience will think that they've really come up with something when they pick it out. That's what they're doing.
Trek kind of will always have scenes where it's like, I'm going to like relate this to something and it, it can be nice, but then other times other times it feels like very forced. I guess it was just kind of like a one-liner, so it's okay. It's not the biggest offense. They're just like, okay, Ahab.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a defense at all. And I didn't know that we were going to be like fighting for the soul of our podcast, like in this episode of it. But I think that Trek often does that a lot. But one of the things that I've always liked about Trek, especially a show like TNG, is all the times that they don't do it. Is all the episodes that we probably can't ever talk about on this show. When I think about something like Half a Life, what's another story where a lady finds love late in life, but the guy's going to commit suicide or something like that, and then she's got to try to talk him out of it, and then Michelle Forbes with like TV antenna hair shows up, and so many stories in TNG are so unique and can't be tied to anything else that I do think that it's maybe a little bit of self-consciousness. They're sort of like, we stole from a movie on this one, but we want you to know that we know what we're doing.
Okay. Part of me just thinks it's like, it's just a little fun. You know what I mean?
I don't need to have fun.
Like, just to be like, okay, this week they're Robin Hood. Like, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but like being Robin Hood is more of just like a vibe than, they're not doing like
than being like the story beats.
Story.
Yeah, you're right.
If they did Hercules and they were just like, I'm Hercules, I'm very strong, I've got to clean out a stable, like that's one thing. But if they were Hercules and they were like, and this is James Woods and he's Hades, it's like, okay, that's you're doing a very specific specific thing.
I totally, I agree with what you're saying. That is like, I don't know, and it just feels like sometimes it's just a reference. Like sometimes the reference they pick, it's like, is this what you would really like remember and talk about? You know what I mean? Like when like, let's sing a song. How about row, row, row your boat?
Row, row. I love row, row, row your boat. Yeah.
It's like, and they're like, you don't know row, row, row your boat? That makes me think like, what happened like culturally to us in the future? Like, did everyone's like brains get destroyed and row your boat? Maybe people will still be singing that, but people won't be like at a campfire and like, let's sing row your boat. So anyway, sometimes the references feel like that, where it's like,
I suppose, yeah.
When I was young, my dad, he used to tell me about Peter Griffin and
oh my God, let's hope not.
No.
Yeah, I think that the Spotify servers took a direct hit in World War III, and so I think we've had to just piece together, whatever we could find culturally for, our musical past.
Like
I don't know. I think, once we were able to create media beyond, specifically like music, like written music, sheet music. Once we have the phonograph, once we have things like that, you completely up the chance that a song will be remembered, right? So there are, I'm sure, some songs that are been passed down culturally, but like once you've got Mary Had a Little Lamb or something like that on a phonograph, then that's just going to stick around. And
true, yeah.
So I'm trying to think of like what are some of the oldest songs I've ever sung by a campfire, and I'm not even sure what they are. You know, there's something like, I assume that Kumbaya has old origins, but of course it was very popular in the 60s and the sort of Cultural Revolution, and so it was sung around a lot of campfires and then passed down by hippie parents probably to their kids. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good question. And as far as like what they remember, I don't know. I always go back and forth on them referencing specific culture and them just saying, "Oh, moon over Rigel 7." You know, if you're going to put work into it and write a song called Beyond Antares and then have Nichelle Nichols sing it, go for it. I'm down for that. But
I love
just to
that,
say like, it's sort of like Edison or Einstein or Gleep Glorp, you know, that whole thing is like, all right, just skip that part though.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, for a while I thought it was like a Voyager bias I had, because I felt like it like always felt more annoying in that. I don't know what it is, but like, yeah, like it's something I can't actually describe, like what specifically works sometimes and other times it doesn't, you know, because sometimes I love those references and then other times I'm like, ugh, God, why did you say that? You know, but I have no, like, I don't have a rule because sometimes it's the exact same thing.
It's also possible that they felt like they could not get away with doing something about a guy chasing a giant monster and not point out Moby Dick, since Star Trek, you know, constantly goes back to Moby Dick. So they wanted to make sure the audience knew, we're going back to Moby Dick.
I think it might, maybe it's completely narcissistic. I don't know what because maybe it's a thing where it could either be they're self-conscious about it and they want you to know, but it could also be because they want you to know that they're referencing smart things because they're smart. Yeah. And they wrote something smart. But it could be both, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, well, I made the dumb reference to this classic piece of literature that I've read.
I wonder if the guy, I don't think this was let's see. It looks like it was written by staff writers, but not ones that I really recognize. Oh, they also wrote Sunkatse. All right, so all bets are off.
Awesome.
So yeah, you know, I think there probably is a little column A, a little column B there. I have to say though that I did like, you know, Katai as a character.
Oh,
I mean,
he serves awesome.
He serves a function more than anything else in the story, but I did like his portrayal of him and the idea that there was this guy who's just been chasing this thing around for years and years and years. And he's smart. Like at this point, I guess you become, after, I don't know how he survived in the early years, but like as in later years, he's become kind of immune to the effect. And so it doesn't really bother him and he's not really fooled by it. But he was fooled. That's how we got into this situation when they find him, you know, in the belly of the beast. He's like, I finally came up with this new plan. I was going to park right next to, you know, the heart and like shoot it. And then the thing, you know, convinced me that I was close to the heart, like this new thing. So it's like, it's still kind of getting me after all these years. That was a neat thing.
He seemed like an Ahab you could like hang out with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. They never, to their credit and the you know, the allusion to Moby Dick, they never put in a situation where he was like, no, we have to do this. It's like, well, that'll destroy us. Oh, I'm going to do it anyway. And he lives.
Yeah, there's actually, well, does he live? Because at the end he like goes, they kind of leave
goes
it
after
it
again.
Mark.
Yeah.
I think that's the only negative you could say is like, well, it seems like maybe something he will never actually be able to defeat, but he's going to spend the rest of his life chasing this thing. But this had me thinking like, okay, what's the problem? Because unlike Ahab, he has no crew. Like, if this guy wants to go nuts trying to kill this thing, no big deal. It's fine. Just let him go. Yeah. I mean, it seems like someone should kill this thing if they can, but...
Yeah.
Might as
Yeah,
well.
Voyager just put a buoy down.
Right,
Watch out! There's a giant thing. This buoy could be it. That's how the powers work. So yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it wouldn't work. Yeah, this thing sounds like one of the greatest. If this was now, this would be like the season finale thing they got to kill, and they find out that it's lonely and nervous.
Something. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh God, it's Discovery season 5. Here it comes. Yeah, having a creature that affects your perceptions is really, it gives you the opportunity to tell a story that could be really shaking for the crew, a crew of scientists who are exploring, who are categorizing and learning, what the universe is, and then meeting something that can just, change your perspective, change your perceptions. I always like stories like that. So a lot of times you'll see stories where it's an Among Us type thing, where a character can look like other characters and is trying to kill people or something, and so you'll think that you've done it all, you've won, but it's not. Like that person has just killed the other person, and now they are that person. And Star Trek's done that a couple times. There's a DS9 episode where a guy leaps from body to body. So
right, yeah.
I like the fact that I think it's a real Voyager kind of thing, and all these episodes are just 45 minutes long, but it doesn't really go all the way through that. It does give us that one nice swerve at the end where it's like, oh, we did it. Oh, that's kind of easy. And then Ahab's like, we're not out, you idiots. Like, you're being fooled. That's what it does.
Yeah, I like that little twist, and like how it, like that was like the final, like raising of the stakes when it's like, now they have to convince Seven. I like that moment a lot.
Yeah, but it isn't even an act break. It just comes all in the last act.
Yeah, it's
which
a
is a real
rushed.
It's a real Voyager move. It's sort of like we did a lot of setup, and now we just have to kind of get out of it, and the episode's over.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, yeah, that can happen to the best of Star Trek series, because they are oftentimes telling a story that could easily have been like a film. You know what I mean? Like a 90-minute movie or something, but they got to cram it into that ep.
Yeah, you lose things sometimes because of that. I thought that there was an interesting parallel that they just didn't choose to explore between Katai and his quest and Voyager's quest to get home. They do kind of reference it at the very end when, they're like, oh, you can come with us. He's like, no, I got to keep doing this. This is my thing, and you guys have to find home. But they're both kind of obsessed in that way. And God knows, we've got plenty of episodes where Janeway is, her commitment to their mission and is questioned and she's put to the test. So we don't need to drag her into this necessarily. But I did think that was a clear parallel, between their circumstances.
Yeah, one where they have to... I mean, then they could have analyzed, like, the Ahab element of the guy more. Because that would kind of... Is this, like, a fruitless quest? They could have ended it, like, if they don't know if they're really out of it or not.
Yeah.
Are we really
I think for a show like TNG, where they're just cruising around a galaxy, a part of the galaxy that they know, you could do that. Kind of like when they defeat the bugs, they blow the guy's head up, but it's like they sent that signal. I wonder if it was received. Leave it open ended. But for a show that's literally about them getting home, you don't want to have the danger that
hats.
Like after the fireworks go off, in San Francisco, we pull back and Ahab's like, no, you got to get out of there. They just kind of ruined the entire series.
No, yeah, too many hats.
That's how they wanted to end DS9. Apparently, I think Ronald Moore said that. Like after they're looking out the window, then Benny Russell pulls a piece of paper out of his typewriter and he's like, "Yeah, it's pretty good." It's like, no, it was all a story.
That would be horrible, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't do that.
I liked when they brought him back for that one episode, though. That was really awesome.
I think that was the compromise. They're like, let's put it on Cisco instead and have him think that it's all a story.
Yeah, and it was like the PA rates are messing with your mind, but yeah, it makes you think, and I like it. It puts you on edge. Like, are they going to actually do this? You know what I mean? But no, they don't go there.
We don't. This is pretty tightly focused on Seven and Naomi and to some degree the Doctor, and so we don't really get a lot from the other characters. I would have to wonder if, I mean, on the Enterprise D, you've got an amazing crew, and then you've got Data. And a lot of times the problem is solved by the fact that a android can't be telepathied and he can't be poisoned or Psi 2000 or whatever. Voyager is chock-a-block full with characters who theoretically you shouldn't be able to do this kind of stuff to. And so I think they had dealt with them all really well. They kind of leave Tuvok out of this one. I feel like Tuvok would at least struggle with, what he sees, either because he can control his desires or because he has the telepathic discipline. But this is a giant creature with a gigantic brain, so presumably, being a Vulcan is no way around it.
And the scene where they show that it's affecting him too is like another one of those moments where you're like,
yeah, they brought his wife back. Yeah,
yeah. Or like when he's talking to Seven or whatever, and you think like, oh, he could be an ally, and then when it's like, no, he's that far gone too. It's like,
you gotta get out of here. Yeah.
I think
that's what you do. You have Tuvok job to the pitcher plant, and that really puts it over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. make the pitcher plant look strong.
Yeah.
I think maybe if you had more time, you could have shown more of like everyone's desires about when they get home and stuff.
Yeah.
But they did a good job of like, going over that with some people.
I haven't read many of them, but if you like the idea of going a little longer with some of these stories and you feel that some Star Trek episodes, didn't run long enough, that's what the books are for. There are a lot of books that, tackle similar situations. It follows our crew, and you can do a D or an E story, or you can take something and give it a couple more acts or twists than you would normally get in something that you've got to wrap up because there's a toothpaste commercial coming up. And so, if anybody has not explored the Star Trek books, I would definitely recommend looking to them for that kind of storytelling.
I really gotta check out some of those. I'm gonna have to get some suggestions because I have no idea what to do.
I would suggest the friends of mine who write them, but I don't have any specific. I actually personally haven't read a whole ton of them. I remember that I read one like 10 times. It was the only one that I owned when I was younger, but it was a Peter David book called Eye of the Beholder, and in it, the Enterprise discovers a strange alien vessel, and there's nobody on board, but when they go aboard, everybody on board is affected and overwhelmed because the inside of this ship.
You told me about this. It's like a
love. Oh, have I? Oh, great. I'm just repeating myself.
No,
but
it's like a
for anybody who doesn't
one,
remember.
Right?
Yeah. It's all non-Euclidean geometry and these horrible, terrible, weird colors and sights, and it sort of drives everybody crazy. And so they can only really send Data over there, and even he is kind of affected by this sensory overload. And I won't ruin the story, but there's a really strong subplot as well, because I think that there is a telepathic element to this ship, and it affects Dr. Salar, who is a character in the book, and she is trying to take care of there's an Andorian orphan. There's a lot going on in this book that she's trying to take care of, and so Dr. Crusher and Dr. Salar have to sort of deal with the telepathic effects of this thing. It's pretty good. And I got to tell Peter David that I really appreciated that book, and it was really important.
I seriously need to commit to... What's it called?
Eye of the Beholder, I believe.
Okay, I'm gonna...
It's an old TNG pocket book.
Oh, that's also an episode name.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Well, dang. Okay, I'll get back to you on this.
Anything else that you can think of? I think we did a pretty good job covering the episode.
Yeah, no, I honestly, we spent so much time talking about one line referencing Captain Ahab that we were kind of down about, but like I honestly love this episode. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it works really well, and I love that Janeway gets an email and she's like, "Oh, looks like Mark's engagement broke up." She's all ready to go back.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Pitcher plant's laying it on really thick. Oh, my dog had a litter.
That's when I was like, okay, you guys have to be like a little high too for this to make sense.
There's also, speaking of like references to things, which, that's good to put into scripts. I kind of felt like the story that Katai tries to tell the Doctor was kind of his like Jaws USS Indianapolis story, because he's telling the story about how like, the beast, one time I had it, I almost had it. And the Doctor's like, can you shut up? I'm trying to like work on this thing. And he's like, oh, okay, sorry, forget it.
Yeah, oh, poor guy. He's trying to connect,
He can't tell his stories to anybody. Yeah, he's all alone.
Oh.
Out there in his little ship. Well, let's take a break for a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more backtracking.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
And I'm Caliban.
And we're the hosts of the Sailor Noob podcast. I'm the expert.
And I'm the noob.
You're talking into the wrong end of the microphone.
Aye, aye.
Okay, every week we watch a new episode of Sailor Moon and learn about monsters, fashion, food, culture, and of course, the sailor warrior of love and justice, Sailor Moon.
All right, now, what is her rank? Is she an admiral or a rear admiral?
Okay, shh. The ad's almost over. We're a couple of magical people, and every week we Moon Prism Power make up a new episode.
Better midships. Steady as she goes.
Please stop that. Sailor Noob is available every Friday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shiver me timbers. We're back. It's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. When Star Trek Prodigy premiered in 2021, it entered a television landscape already replete with sci-fi adventure shows, 4 of them specifically Star Trek series, so it was always important for Prodigy to distinguish itself from other sci-fi family fare. It accomplished that goal by reintroducing the world of Star Trek not only to its young audience, but also to the cast of characters that populated the show, teenagers who had no knowledge of Starfleet or the Federation that it defends. The result was an energetic series that revisited familiar Trek storytelling tropes, but saw them through the eyes of the show's rapidly maturing adventurers. The crew of the Protostar will have its hands full trying to stay uneaten when they follow a Dreamcatcher to the Terror Planet.
I could stay here forever. Couldn't you?
Janeway said she can't leave the ship.
You're too smart for your own good.
If you're not Janeway, then who are you?
Consider me a representative.
I was told there's no intelligent life here.
Life is everywhere. We have the ability to see what you want and give it to you. We also sense your fear. You can stop running. The diviner won't find you here. We can protect you, but you have to stay.
You nailed it. Like, it is kind of like it's sort of like a lesson on Star Trek, like watching it.
Yeah, the lessons. I mean, there's always lessons in Star Trek if it's good, but the lessons are definitely self-conscious and more didactic, and I think that's fine for a cartoon. And when I read either the synopsis or I just saw the first couple minutes of the episode, I was like, oh, they're doing a shore leave, or they're doing a Bliss here. This is a planet where they're going to see things and they're going to be sort of tempted into sticking around and then probably get eaten.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what it delivers.
Yeah, it's always cool to do this kind of episode, whether it's people seeing illusions or a planet like this or a telepath or a shapeshifter. You want to do one of these because it allows you to give the audience insights into your characters that you would normally have if things are just unfolding, right? And so it's like when you do the Crazy Gas episode. You always do the Crazy Gas episode about halfway through your first season, so then everybody can act like they wouldn't act, and that kind of reaffirms the way that they do act, because they're like, right. Oh, I can't believe that I did that. And so getting to see what each character, or at least 4 or 5 of our characters, wants. We don't know what Murph wants. Murph is an enigma.
Yeah.
We get to learn a lot more about these characters who really we just kind of jumped on a ship with them and just headed out into the universe. And so we know, big baby, fart joke, weird ball guy.
That's a great description.
And we get to learn, what their kind of secret desires are.
I feel like you do it kind of early, but it's also weird when you do it like too early.
Yeah.
Like I feel like TNG, it was a little too early where you're like, well, I don't even.
Well, the second episode when everybody's like being fully functional. Yeah.
It's like weird because you're like, I don't know. It's like, are they like, is this, you know what I mean? Like you don't know the characters enough to know that they are acting weird, but you do also want it to do it after you've kind of established them. And I guess with this series, it's like much shorter, so it kind of makes sense. It's kind of more introducing you to the characters, like what they want. But for a lot of them, it's just sort of like, it's like, oh, he just wants some like barbecue. That's his big vision, which is fine. It's fine for with that character what they're going for, but it's not it's not profound necessarily. You know what I mean?
Doing a body swap and a Crazy Gas fantasy episode like right in the middle of Strange New Worlds was like probably the right thing to do, right?
Yeah, you're right.
You get to know this version of Spock, and then T'Pring, and then they swap, and then they're out of their comfort zones, and then they're back, and then later on, like we know that the captain isn't a craven coward. He's got nice hair, not bad hair, and so he's going to be the opposite of that for a while.
Yeah, particularly with the Freaky Friday episode, I feel like they nailed like the lead up, and then what that episode helped progress their story. Like I think they nailed that pretty good.
Yeah, I think out of all of the characters on this show, the one that I have the most trepidation about is Dahl, and it isn't because I saw a huge, terrifying life-size version of him at Mission Chicago.
All right,
but because I think he's the most conventional of the characters here. He's the one that we get. He's the Star-Lord. He's the J.J. Abrams Captain Kirk. He's good, but like maybe he needs to learn a little bit of discipline, some rules, and stuff like that. And I've seen all 10 episodes of the first part of the season. I think they are doing a great job of showing a nice gradual progression with, stumbles and mistakes along the way of him learning to be better at what he does. And I don't think it's necessarily a journey that will necessarily end with him being the captain. I think that he wants to be the captain because, well, I've often argued that the captain is in some ways the most like worthless person on the ship. Obviously you need somebody to make decisions, somebody to be the face of the ship and to give orders. But when it comes down to sending people to the planet, we need a 20th century expert. We need a quantum physicist or something. That's not going to be the captain. The captain should be the delegator. And so I think Dahl looked around at all the other people and he went, badass with a sword, giant rock girl, genius energy ball, good mechanic, and he's like, I'll be the captain because there's nothing else that I can really do, And so hopefully he'll either become the captain because he becomes good at knowing his crew's strength, or he won't feel like he has to be that because he'll find something that he does really well.
Right, totally. And I feel like they've done a good, because sometimes a show like that can like run the risk of like they keep stumbling and bumbling and like you feel like, are they learning? You know what I mean? If it goes on for too long, I feel like they've had a nice progression where he's kind of like learned from his mistakes. He's still human, so he's making them, but it's not like every episode the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in the final episode, or is it episodes? It's a two-parter, right?
It's a two-parter, yeah.
Yeah, the final episodes, he coordinates their whole heist to free everybody and to get back to where the ship is. So
and
I think it's
part of it is
well.
too. It's not. He's like, it can't just be like a plan I have. It's like it's got to be well thought out. So they don't really show the. If this was like a 45-minute Trek episode, you'd be like, show them kind of giving all the input or whatever, but you kind of get the idea. It's like this is a group plan, not just his plan.
Yeah. And of course these are two different episodes, although I think they functionally just might as well be one episode, because it doesn't the next episode just picks up with another act from the story that was going before. And there is a lot of like kind of shifts with the dynamics between the characters, because it starts off, and at this point they've thrown Gwen in the brig, and then she gets out and everybody is fearful of her and resentful, but then she kind of saves everybody, and then they're on board with her, and then they realize that she was just sort of like, she's been trying to get them to sell them out this entire time, and then she kind of goes off on her own and has her own realization with confronting her father and realizing like what he's been about this entire time. And at the very end of the episode, it's kind of revealed that the secret of the ship is revealed and the proto drive. So like a lot happens in these 2 episodes. They're right in the middle of the first part of this season, but I just watching it again, I was like, man, a lot comes out in this episode.
Yeah, they do a decent job of like kind of weaving, like moving the plot forward while still sort of like this episode, like they learn about this, or and like, you know what I mean, like having kind of an individual story, but like it's usually always still connected to like what's going on with the diviner and stuff. So they always like, especially with only 10 episodes, like it has to like basically move along pretty quickly. I think it's like a nice fast-paced show. I think it's kind of better for it.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, it's only half an hour, so you're missing a couple of the sort of traditional acts of Trek storytelling, but it just means that there's no real B stories or just real truncated B stories. I think the show really works when they've got something that they can kind of focus on. A good example would be the time loop episode.
Oh yeah.
Where they're kind of stuck in this thing, and it's a very specific plot. It focuses around Rock Talk, and then it also involves her specific interactions with every member of the crew, and that's a good way to take a very short amount of time and go through, go all around the circle in terms of developing the characters and also moving it forward. And again, that is also a big episode for her, because she goes from being a child who is big and tough but doesn't really have a lot of skills to like being really smart at the end because of timey-wimey stuff.
Right, yeah. I think that's too, like, using the time travel, they can just like move the ball along there way quicker. Yeah. I guess we should talk about like Prodigy and like our impressions of it. People the biggest or one of the biggest criticisms I hear of it is like, it's like Star Wars, it's like Clone Wars. I think it actually is like Star Wars.
You don't like Star Wars? Isn't Clone Wars a good show? Doesn't everybody say that? Like, what's wrong with Trek going, Neighbors, that looks pretty good. Like, what if I did that?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it if, like, it just feels like sometimes it's going for that tone. Not this show, but, like, Trek will try that. But it's, like, it makes it kind of dumb, But I feel like this show is both, like, fast-paced and, like, thoughtful, but it doesn't lay it on as thick because it's like shorter, and I think it's just meant to kind of like get kids to like think about Star Trek-y things, you know what I mean? But it still like does a good job of like not being, I don't think it's ever like super dumb, and it's like fun and fast paced.
Yeah, but like every new show that they do, Trek has always had its formula, and I think that it has been very confident in telling stories the way that it does. And I think that they pushed that when they had two shows on at the same time, one which was about what DS9 was and one which was about what Voyager was, but still kind of doing that Trek storytelling thing. And I think they really showed like the limits and the fatigue of the audience when they did that again with Enterprise, and people were just like, yeah, we're just doing other stuff now. Maybe this isn't the way that you do Trek or do sci-fi on TV anymore. And so with every new show, it's a new experiment in how we're going to do this and what works and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. And
yeah.
And Discovery has been experimenting with, the long form storytelling. Strange New Worlds has been a a reaction to that, a reversal and going back to standalone storytelling. I don't know what's going on in Picard. I think it's maybe an experiment in psychotropics, but they are definitely just doing like whatever they think of on Picard. And some of those experiments work and some of them don't work so much. But I wonder if the new face of Trek is we're just going to do, a bunch of different styles, or if they will, once they find something that really works, they'll just kind of keep doing that. If I think it's inarguable to say that Strange New Worlds has been very successful, and I wonder if we'll see the standalone storytelling return to other shows like Picard or Discovery.
Yeah, you know what? If it is like significantly successful, I could totally see them. I actually could believe like they would go like, okay, Discovery next season or whatever, we're gonna like try to copy that model. Because I personally would prefer it if they just everyone tried different things and we got unique types of shows. But I could totally see them kind of more like just chasing whatever is like the most like seems like it's the most popular thing,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like that's there's a lot of integrity there.
Because similar to the short treks, like we thought that would be kind of a unique experiment, and you could see like from an artistic perspective like what merits it would have, but it turns out it was mostly like, I don't know, it was a lot of them were like just felt like trailers for the show almost.
Yeah I really did like the idea of Star Trek short films, and I don't think that's really what they had in mind, but I don't know. I hope that you're right. I agree with you. I hope that they continue to see each one of these things not only as a different setting in the Star Trek universe, but also a different, a different medium, a different chance to explore a way to tell a story. And I don't know if Prodigy is immune to that because it's a half an hour or because it's a cartoon or because it's a kid's show, but I think that they have found the right formula for this. I think that this really works. Call it a clone of clones if you want, but I think that it's very successful.
I think it helps too that it's because part of what makes the other shows feel like kind of dumb sometimes is like characters will do things that like maybe Han Solo would do, but not like a Starfleet officer would do. You know what I mean? They would do the more exciting thing and not the boring thing or whatever. What I think this show does that makes it work is that like these are just all like these are kids like learning about what the right thing to do is, you know what I mean? So they're kind of like, and they're all outlaws, and I think that works. I wonder though if the show goes too long and if they ever got like accepted into Starfleet, does it then become like a boring Star Trek show? You know what I mean?
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. And the only good effect, look, I love Kate Mulgrew and I love Janeway, but like the only good result to the real Janeway and Chakotay showing up on the show is for them to, eventually meet up with the crew and then want them to do something that is the Starfleet thing. But then the kids going, no, we're going to do this, which is a different but also positive thing because, there are more people in the galaxy than people who are in the Federation and in Starfleet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
that's my hope.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to like seeing that meeting or whatever, but I worry about it going too long and running out of gas. But
well, it's a Nickelodeon cartoon. It's gonna go as long as it possibly can.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm not really that worried about it. Like if it happens, that's fine. I'll stop watching it, I guess.
I like, speaking of Janeway, I like holographic Janeway, and I like the fact that holographic Janeway is like, what would Janeway do in this situation? Like, apparently, these Starfleet holograms are very advanced. Presumably, she was built after the Doctor, so presumably she's as smart and self-aware as the Doctor is. And she's like, so she's able to go like, well, I'm supposed to be Janeway, so what would Janeway do?
And the implication of that is weird to me, actually. It made me thinking...
It's terrifying.
Why does it have to be based on a real person? They never.
Yeah.
Do they say that like when Zimmerman shows up on DS9? Like, does he say like why he needs to come like measure Bashir and like is it just the personality aspect? Like, you don't think they could?
I think it. Yeah. I think it is. I don't think that it's explicit necessarily, but I think the assumption is that, you know, we can program a computer. Obviously, anybody on the Enterprise can, you know, talk to the computer and tell it to do stuff, and it can say it can or can't do stuff. But to have a personality, to have somebody that you interact with, especially a character that needs a bedside manner and has to tell you about diagnoses and things like that, you want a human template. Now, if you can create completely convincing holodeck characters, yeah, I don't know why you can't just make a fake person. But I don't know. It's also kind of an honor, I suppose, to be chosen to be that.
I just would feel weird, like almost like giving because I guess it's been proven though that they can make something with a unique personality, because like the Doctor isn't like Zimmerman, you know. Like, I mean, he may have started that way, but he evolved. But I guess it sort of makes me think though, like, would I want to be like, yeah, I'll let them create a being that has like it almost feels like there's a weird responsibility there, you know?
It's a form of immortality of sorts, I suppose.
I would just feel guilty a little bit, like, sorry, you have my thoughts and experiences. I'm sorry.
That's not good for patients having to deal with me. You know, the fact that you know, our heroes are all being confronted with these particular enigmas or desires is fascinating. Some of them are simpler than others, needing a friend or just wanting a good meal. But I thought that Dahl's was just horrifying. You know, the fact that he is obviously rebellious and self-sufficient, but he does deep down have a desire to know about his past and his parents, if they exist. And because he doesn't even know what they look like, they don't have faces, you know, and short of them terrifying young kids by having them turn around and they have like no faces, he just doesn't see them. And I thought that was really chilling. Not quite as chilling as when evil hologram fake Janeway goes total apeshit on him, and she's like, stay here.
I love the evil version of Janeway.
Yeah,
like
we got a couple different evil Janeways in the first season of. That's a recurring theme in Prodigy.
Oh, true. I liked with his vision. Like, the show is like sometimes like, dang, this is like a little bit heavier than I expected. You know?
Yeah.
Like, especially it's like starts with like child slavery or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, holy cow.
Child slavery, torture.
That makes me think too. Like, okay, this is jumping way ahead, but like the diviner, his whole thing is like, I've got to save our race. We've seen this kind of thing before. I'm from the future. I got to save our race. I was sent here on this mission. And part of this mission just required child slavery. I don't know.
Yeah, just going to have to, enslave a bunch of kids.
I guess.
You understand.
I don't know. Maybe that's just like a time thing, but it just feels like there's not if you had to do what you had to do, I guess. I don't know.
I don't have time to explain this. Just,
start
breaking rocks.
Part of me thinks he wanted to do child slavery, and he just made up a reason, you know.
Oh, goody. I get to do child slavery.
He's been waiting.
I love that. Seeing him in this episode, in the flesh, as it were, was very interesting. The show also, much like Bliss, does a neat thing with its premise, where there's a twist. You know, we see him show up and kind of break his daughter's heart because he chooses her over the ship. And then he finally gets up to the ship, and they do a great switcheroo where that wasn't really the ship. That was your view of the ship. Now you are affected by this as well, and our real crew gets away on the real ship.
Yeah, that was really like the best purpose or like best use of the planet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the planet, in general, actually, I wanted to mention I liked that as a concept. Like in the Voyager episode, it kind of like, even though it's like this weird, almost unimaginable creature, like it makes sense. It like swallows you and it digests you. I love this. It's like the planet, the planet digests you. I think that was just like a really fun concept, you know. Like,
yeah,
being on the surface is like being in its stomach almost.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course it doesn't get into the gnarly details because it's a kid's cartoon, but I wonder if they stay there long enough, or if they're sort of like pulled down, you know, below the crust, and they would eventually just be sort of taken apart.
Well, they did mention like acid rain would help with digestion.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
It's an inside-out stomach, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the vines. It probably absorbs the nutrients like through the vines after you're acided.
Oh, it's so gross to think about. Yeah, this is a kid show.
Anything else that we could think of to say about these two episodes?
No, yeah, it was good. I want to just mention I like how each episode they learn an aspect about either Starfleet as you know, their like philosophy, or like you know, they also will learn about like classic, like the transporter or stuff like that. Like it really does work really well to like, this was perfect, I think, to show to a kid, to like introduce the idea of Star Trek to them, and then make them be like, I want to know more about Chakotay.
Yeah.
Where do I learn more about him? And then they watch the boxing episode or whatever.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah, tattoo. Here you go, kid.
That's what this show is good for, is getting kids into Voyager.
And they do that with all aspects of the franchise as well. You know, I thought that was cool that they kind of low-key found this, like a Klingon ship, you know, a crashed ship. And it was no big deal. They were just like, oh, yeah, it's just must have been a Klingon ship, and I got a mech left now, and we're eating Klingon rations. And
yeah, if you're a kid, you want to like probably learn more about that, you know, if you get into the show.
Yeah, right. I wonder if that was like a sleeper ship or something like that, because it's still a little indeterminate about where they really are in space, but they're definitely like in the, you know, some part of the Delta Quadrant. And so if that was a ship like we see in Heart of Glory and TNG, or if some industrious Klingons were just like, yeah, we're going to go out and conquer that area, and just flew out there.
And I also can just sort of buy that, like, in this time period, we've like kind of advanced tech, you know, that we can more easily travel to that area, you know, like we can get around the more of the galaxy easier. And so I think one thing I like about this show too is that it's only a glimpse, and that's part of why I'm sort of looking forward to the next season. I feel bad saying like one of the things I'm looking forward to is seeing like the characters I know come in, but like I am excited to get like a glimpse of like actual Starfleet stuff in that time period specifically. That's not just like Picard doing, you know, like Fox News interviews or whatever, and it's horrible.
Yeah. I agree. I think that they have been very gun shy for whatever reason about doing that. You know, every show that they've done has been
the prequels, and like,
has it been a prequel or has been a sidequel? Yeah, or has been set completely outside of the area. And Picard is our only look at the future of the future, and then they do a completely alternate future, and then they go back into the past. So I don't know why the franchise does not want to give us the 25th century.
Like, this is my experiences. Like I'm thinking back to 10 years ago when over that now, when I first got into Star Trek, and I watched on Netflix, the ones I loved were TNG, Deep Space Nine, I think not so much Voyager, but after like, wow, this has been great, like what happens next? You know, like the Dominion War, like what did that do? You know, Voyager coming back and like transwarp and the Borg stuff, like what happens next? You know, and then it's just like, I don't know, I still feel like I don't really know, or like
I think
it just sounds horrible, like everything blew up, like all these planets are destroyed. I'm like, I guess that's part of history, I guess, but I don't know.
It might be a while until we find out. On Enterprising Individuals, we're covering the films of Star Trek this year, and I just talked about Star Trek Insurrection, and part of Insurrection, part of the setup of the plot is that the Federation is concerned. They're concerned about, this is during the last season of DS9, the Dominion War. They're concerned about the Borg post First Contact. And so the Federation kind of stands at a point where they're not really sure what's going to happen going forward. And that is kind of continued into Nemesis because, of course, there's a big revolution in the Romulan Empire. And that's kind of it for that part of the franchise. And Insurrection was written by Michael Piller, a guy who at that point had left the franchise, but before that had helped to build what we think of as 24th century 90s and early 2000s Trek. Like, he was the architect of a lot of that, and he tried to revisit that in his film with an interesting story in Insurrection, and then reboot, baby. Then it's J.J. Abrams, and we go back to another universe in the past, and nobody's really taken the torch and tried to lead people out of there like the Batman yet.
Yeah, like we do know that Picard saved the world from the the Mass Effect thing.
Yeah,
so that's good to know, I guess.
And we know that Fox News still exists. So,
I also feel like kind of bummed though too, because like, it's like, okay, there was the Romulan Civil War, but then like all of Romulus, like,
it doesn't matter because it just blows up.
So it's like, oh, I would love to see like more what happened with that, but like now it's like, does it even matter if this all exploded or whatever? And then I also know how that concludes, because Discovery went way in the future, and they're like, yeah, they reunified.
Yep, everything's kind of the same as it was. So it's like, great.
But I don't know, maybe...
But there's still 1,000 years to play in, though.
Yeah, maybe that would be interesting to see how that happened or something, That actually, that could be a good idea.
Well, I hope that they do explore that. Of course, there will be Star Trek playing when you and I die, and so I'm sure at some point they will get back to doing that on their long journey to the future. And to do that, they'll have to use technology, because Trek is Trek because of the future technology. That technology sometimes facilitates what the characters are doing. Just as often, it's the actual complication that they're dealing with. So on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies. We add what we get to the non-Trek media and subtract it from the Trek episode. This is a little different, though, of course, because we are talking about two different Trek scenarios. So we will only be subtracting today, although we generally call this our technological exchange. Here's the list of technologies that we pick from. We've got phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drives, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And using my random number selecting technology, I will get us a number. The number is 10. If androids did not exist in either of these scenarios, where would they be?
Okay, well, this actually, do you count... No, you don't count the holograms. This is Voyager kind of messes with this a little bit.
It does. I think holodecks is, I think we decided a while back that was kind of simulated experience, and artificial intelligence would be androids. So I think that the Doctor would be out of this one.
Yeah. And Janeway, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, 2 emergency holograms in both cases.
Very crucial in these situations. It'd be like taking Data out of the episode would also... He's kind of your ace in the hole. You know what I mean?
How do they get through the game? Everybody's playing the game without Data.
Well, they could do Naomi Wildman episode. She'd have to step up a bit, do a little bit more.
Naomi Wildman's got a phaser rifle. She's doing the whole thing. No Doctor would be a rough one, but I would have to imagine he is able to... I don't know. I actually think that he is a little ancillary to what's going on, because he kind of researches the thing, and he's also
just like the tech part of the episode, Okay. You tell. All right, here's what we got to do. That's
he checks on the crew members, and he their elevated levels of telepathy hormone or whatever. But I would think that 7 has shown the ability to compensate, for the lack of other crew members.
Yeah, but it might be. Well, I guess they had the crew there, but he does talk some sense into her.
That's true.
He logics.
He does
with
do
her.
that. I liked how at the end, Orkatai is like, "Come along with me. You'd be perfect for this. Like it doesn't affect you at all. I could use somebody like you," and he's got a point.
Yeah, that's true. That's like when Sonny Clemens or whatever was like, like this is well below his pay grade. I feel like hanging out with this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, go on the road with me, Mr. Data.
What if they were like, oh shoot, we have to write the Doctor off the show, like Robert Picardo quit, and they're like, okay, yeah, he went off and he's on a space journey with the Captain Ahab here.
He's just trying to capture a whale. Yeah.
They really were confident this would be a good spin-off show.
Yeah. We could do anything. They're power mad. Doctor and Ahab. Yeah, going for the whale. If they didn't have Janeway, the emergency command hologram on the Prodigy, how did they get off that planet?
Well, she's pretty key there, for one. I guess they kind of use her as a sort of bait and switch, I guess.
That's true. And it's funny because, in both cases, I think that the Doctor obviously is just one of the main cast of Voyager. He's one of the characters we follow. We haven't quite seen that. I would consider Janeway a member of the crew of the Prodigy, or of the Protostar, but we don't see that quite yet. And so if you take, if there are no, we're actually losing a full-on character if we get rid of holograms or androids. In this episode, I don't think it's quite as important, but in the episode of Prodigy, it's kind of a different, it's sort of a different animal, I think. In this particular scenario, like she's pretty important. Like she's maintaining the ship. She's sort of keeping things together, while the characters are off on the planet. And so if they come back to the ship and it's full of vines, like then they got to deal with that. Janeway hasn't used the little robots to clear it off.
Yeah, she's very important. And then I also think too, like this is like a big part of establishing her character, or not her character, but like her connection with the crew, because it's not until like the one episode where like they think she's like deleted later or something, where everyone actually like they sort of realize how important she is to them, so I feel like this is a very crucial episode that would have effects throughout like the whole season.
Yeah, I think that like ultimately, from what we've seen so far, the Doctor is more important on Voyager, but not necessarily important in this episode. And the opposite is true of Prodigy. Like the Janeway hologram is not really a main character, not necessarily important, but is very key in this episode.
Yeah, big time.
Because without her, they might still be able to do it. That's a lot of vines for Gwen to cut with her little sword thing.
Yeah, vine removal, definitely an important
That's
job.
going to take a while. You're going to be dissolved and digested before that happens. Yeah. Well, I hope that we get to cover Prodigy again on the show. I hope that there's more episodes that come out soon, because I really do think it's a great show. Yeah,
me too. It's like because before this, there's just been. I mean, kids can watch any Star Trek. I don't care. Oh, yeah. But I feel like this. I love the animated series, but it's cool to have something that a kid now is likely to catch and get maybe tease them with some Star Trek info they might want to know more about.
Yeah, and it's got to be kind of visually appealing. I mean, Star Trek looks great, but a kid might see Star Trek and just think, well, this is just a bunch of adults doing things. I'm not sure that this is for me. But if they see this, kind of entrancing cartoon, they'll be drawn in like the Murder Planet. I got to watch more of this.
Every kid at that convention said they loved Murph.
Yeah, everybody loves Mirth. Yeah.
It's like, yep, that's why that character exists.
Well, should we tell people what's coming up on the next episode of Backtracking?
Yes. So, next episode, we're getting back to some TNG as we talk about the episode Aquiel. And we are watching that alongside the film Laura, which, as we discussed before recording, I know nothing about. So,
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? But I'm excited after you described that it's an old noir film. I'm really excited to do more of that. That's been a good theme.
Yeah, I love noir films. Aquiel is considered one of the worst episodes of TNG, but we'll talk about maybe why that is.
Yeah, no.
And Laura as a film is 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's directed by Otto Preminger and features Gene Tierney, and Vincent Price is in it as well. So it's one of the best movies of all time. So we'll see how those two mix up together.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, well, that's where we'll be next week. But until then, that's it for this week's Backtracking. Thanks for listening, and if you like the show, tell a friend and follow us at Backtracking on Twitter, and tell us as well what you think that we should talk about in future episodes. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at GooeyFame.
And I'm at KA1IBAN on Twitter. And you can find all of the materials, podcasts, and more on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that is it for us for this week. We will see you soon. And until then, keep on trekking.